The lantern's flame trembled in the draft, casting long shadows across the abandoned station house. Jonathan Hale sat alone at the rough-hewn table, hands wrapped around a tin cup of untouched tea. Outside, the wind dragged itself across the plains, howling through the broken eaves like a wounded creature. Winter had come early this year, cruel, sharp, and unapologetic. It had been 4 long years since Amelia's passing, but the station still felt like she'd only stepped out to feed the chickens. Her shawl still hung on the peg. Her handwriting still labeled the jars on the shelf, and every night, Jonathan still reached for the other half of the blanket before remembering it was empty. The plains didn't forgive easily. Neither did grief. Near the window sat Clara, his daughter, a small, delicate thing of 10 years with the same brown curls Amelia once had. She was sewing a patch onto her worn skirt, tongue peeking from the corner of her mouth in concentration. She had learned to sew from memory. Jonathan had never been good with needles. "Papa," she whispered, not looking up, "do you think Mama can see us tonight?" Jonathan's throat tightened. He set the tin cup down carefully. "I reckon she sees everything, honeybee." Nights like these, she always said, winter made the stars brighter. Clara nodded, satisfied, but her small hands shook slightly around the needle. She'd been having nightmares for weeks now, though she pretended otherwise. Nights full of thunder and fire, memories of the blaze that had taken Amelia. The station creaked, weary under winter's weight. The telegraph line outside trembled, a faint metallic rattle. This land was unforgiving, but it was home. All Clara knew. A distant sound broke through the wind. Hoofbeats. Jonathan stiffened, instinct sliding like a blade into his spine. At this hour? In this storm? No one traveled the plains after sundown unless something was terribly wrong. Clara's head lifted. "Papa, stay here." Jonathan rose, grabbing his coat and shotgun, not because he expected trouble, but because living alone on the frontier taught a man never to take chances. The hoofbeats slowed, then stopped right outside the station. Through the frosted window, he could make out a rider slumped forward, barely clinging to the saddle. A lantern swung from the horse's side, swaying wildly in the wind. The door banged once, soft, weak, as if someone didn't have the strength to knock again. Jonathan unbarred it. A woman collapsed into him. Light hair, almost white in the winter gloom, fell over her face. Snow clung to her lashes. Her dress was torn at the hem, boots caked with ice. He caught her just before she hit the floor. "Sir?" she rasped. "Please. I'm looking for the Hale station." I didn't mean to." "You found it, ma'am," Jonathan murmured. "Easy now, you're half frozen." Clara appeared at his side, eyes wide. "Papa, she's hurt." "Fetch blankets. Quick now." While Clara ran, Jonathan lowered the stranger into the chair by the fireplace. Her fingers were blue from cold, her breathing shallow. A bruise bloomed along her cheek like a dark flower. He pulled the lantern closer, adjusting the flame. "What happened to you?" he asked gently. "Wolves? A fall?" Her eyes fluttered open. "No. My husband." Her voice cracked. "Or the man who used to be. He didn't take kindly to me leaving." Jonathan felt a chill deeper than winter. On the frontier, law was a distant rumor. Men took what they wanted unless someone stood between them. And here she was, alone, hurt, freezing, carrying grief in her bones. Clara returned with blankets, cheeks pink with worry. She draped them around the woman carefully, like she used to do with her mother. "Thank you, dear," the woman whispered. "I'm Lillian. Lillian Ward." "I'm Clara," she said proudly. "And this is Papa." Jonathan shot her a look, but Lillian only managed a faint smile. Safe. That's what her eyes said. She'd found safety where she expected judgment. Her body shivered uncontrollably. Jonathan moved a pot of water onto the stove. "You need warmth first, food after, and rest most of all." "I don't want to trouble you," she murmured. "Trouble would be letting someone freeze on my doorstep." He wrapped another blanket around her shoulders. She blinked hard, tears mixing with melting snow. "Thank you. I didn't know where else to go." "The town doctor in Clearwater," he said, head east, said the Hale station was still a place where kindness lived. Jonathan paused. He hadn't heard himself described that way in a long time. Clara sat beside Lillian, hands folded. "You can stay," she said simply. "Mama would want us to help, At the mention of Amelia, Jonathan felt the old wound twist. But Clara was right. Amelia had been the kind one. The one who fed strays and bandaged travelers and prayed for everyone, even the thieves. Lillian sank deeper into the chair, exhaustion overtaking her. Her eyes closed. Her breathing steadied. Jonathan watched her. This broken soul carried here. By a winter storm and desperation. She was running from something cruel. And now she was under his roof. The wind battered the windows. Snow thickened in sheets, blanketing the plains in merciless white. "Looks like the storm's settling in for days," Jonathan muttered. Clara nodded. "Then she has to stay with us, Papa. It's too dangerous to go back out." Jonathan sighed, rubbing a hand across his jaw. The line between kindness and trouble was paper thin out here. Shelter a runaway woman with a violent husband? That could paint a target big enough to blot out the sun. But he looked at Clara, small, hopeful, trusting. And he looked at Lillian, shivering, bruised, exhausted. Some things a man just couldn't turn away from. "We'll figure it out in the morning," he finally said. Clara brightened instantly. Jonathan stoked the fire, adding more wood until flames leapt high, warm and golden. Lillian's cheeks began to regain color. Her hands steadied. Then her gaze drifted to the mantel. A small wooden toy horse sat there. Amelia had carved it the winter before Clara was born. Lillian stared at it with a look Jonathan recognized too well. A woman who had lost more than she dared say. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "For what?" "For bringing my troubles to your door." "For reminding you of something painful." Jonathan swallowed hard. "I reckon winter brings back memories whether someone walks in bleeding or not." Her eyes softened. Kind eyes. Tired eyes. The storm howled again, shaking the station. Clara curled into Jonathan's side. "Papa? Will she be safe here?" He hesitated only a second. "As long as she needs," he answered. Lillian's breath hitched. Tears gathered but didn't fall. "Thank you, Jonathan." Hearing his name in her voice did something strange to him. Like an old door opening a crack in a long-abandoned room. He cleared his throat, uneasy. "Rest now. We'll talk when the sun's up." Lillian nodded weakly, surrendering to the warmth and the weight of safety she hadn't felt in years. Clara sat cross-legged beside her, humming a lullaby Amelia used to sing. Soft, gentle, like the whisper of summer grass. Jonathan watched them both, the fragile stranger, and the brave little girl, and realized something unsettling. For the first time in years, the station didn't feel empty. But winter wasn't done testing them, and neither was the past Lillian had run from. Above the telegraph line, lightning flickered silently, an omen dancing through the snow-dark sky. Jonathan Hale had no idea the storm outside was nothing compared to the one headed straight for his doorstep. The storm did not ease through the night. It roared against the station walls like an angry beast, rattling the shutters, pushing snow into drifts high enough to bury a wagon whole. By dawn, the world outside had turned white and shapeless, nothing but swirling frost and the wail of winter wind. Jonathan hadn't slept. He sat by the fire, boots heavy on the floorboards, watching the flames lick upward in steady rhythm. Lillian slept on the cot near the hearth. Clara insisted she take her bed, wrapped tightly in blankets. Breath evening out at last. The bruise on her cheek looked darker now, angry against her pale skin. Clara, curled on a chair with her knees tucked close, had dozed off near dawn. Her curls spilled across her forehead, rising slightly with each quiet breath. Jonathan rubbed a hand across his face. The station felt different this morning, heavier somehow, warmer and colder in the same breath. The door trembled under a blast of wind. Jonathan rose instantly, hand going to the shotgun. Habit, instinct, survival. But no one in their right mind would be traveling through a storm like this unless they were desperate, or following someone. His jaw tightened. Before he reached the door, a soft groan came from behind him. Lillian shifted under her blankets, blinking awake, disoriented. "Is it morning?" she whispered. "Near enough." Jonathan lowered the gun but didn't set it down. Storm still howling. Lillian sat up slowly, wincing. Her hand drifted to her ribs. He took a step forward. "Are you hurt worse than you said?" A pause. Her eyes flicked to Clara. "No, I'll manage." Jonathan didn't believe her, Not fully, but he didn't push. He'd seen enough pride in broken people to know when not to pry. Clara stirred, rubbing her eyes. "Morning, Papa." "Morning, Miss Lillian." "Good morning, sweetheart," Lillian whispered with a small smile. "Thank you for your bed. I slept better than I have in months." Clara's cheeks warmed with shy pride. Jonathan busied himself at the stove, heating water, breaking open a jar of dried cornmeal. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, just full. Like all three were learning the shape of this new, unexpected morning. Clara curled up beside Lillian, clutching a worn rag doll. "Mama used to say storms make folks kinder." Lillian's eyes softened. "Your mother sounds like she was a wonderful woman." "She was," Jonathan said quietly, still facing the stove. Clara nodded vigorously. "She used to sing when storms scared me." Lillian smoothed Clara's curls. "Would you like me to sing?" The little girl brightened immediately. Jonathan froze mid-stir, something sharp catching in his chest, but he said nothing. Lillian began humming, voice soft, trembling at first, then steadying into a gentle, warm melody. A lullaby. Old, familiar, a tune Jonathan hadn't heard since Amelia's last winter. Clara swayed slightly with the rhythm, eyes drifting shut. Jonathan gripped the spoon harder. It wasn't the same voice, but grief could be cruel when it wanted to be, making echoes where there were none. Lillian's song ended with a trembling breath. Jonathan turned slowly. Her eyes were wet. She wiped them quickly, pretending not to. "You all right?" he asked. "Just been a long time since I sang for anyone." His chest tightened again. Breakfast was quiet. Warm, strange. Like a memory he didn't own but felt anyway. When they finished, Clara bundled herself in her coat. "Papa, can I go check the coop? The hens get scared in storms." Jonathan shook his head. "Too cold, too deep. You'll freeze by the fence." "I'll go with her," Lillian offered. "You're barely standing," he replied. "I've survived worse winters. And storms. I'll be fine." Clara looked between them eagerly, hope shining through. "Please, Papa?" He hesitated. The wind battered the walls again. But Lillian's eyes held something steady. Not reckless, just determined. "Stay within sight of the window," he finally said. Clara practically flew to the hooks to grab gloves. Lillian wrapped a scarf around her bruised jaw, wincing only slightly. Jonathan watched them step out into the snow. The storm had eased just enough to see the yard. The chicken coop sat like a half-buried lump near the fence line. Clara moved quickly, leaving tiny boot prints. Lillian followed, slower, protective, her figure bending with the wind but not breaking. Something about the sight twisted his heart in unfamiliar ways. Not danger, not fear, something gentler and harder to name. He stood at the window, breath fogging the glass, watching them. Lillian knelt to fix the coop latch. Clara brushed snow off the roof. The snow stung Lillian's face, making her hair whip wildly, but she only laughed softly when Clara squealed about the cold. Jonathan's grip on the windowsill tightened. He hadn't heard laughter in this yard in years. When they returned, both dusted with snow, Clara burst in first. "Papa, Miss Lillian says she can teach me how to braid a rope the mountain way." Jonathan raised an eyebrow at Lillian, who shrugged lightly. "Old rancher taught me once. It helps keep little hands busy." Clara giggled and ran to the table, excited to start. Lillian closed the door carefully behind her, snow melting down her sleeves. She leaned back against the wood for a moment, eyes closed, catching her breath. "Cold?" Jonathan asked gently. She opened her eyes. More than cold. More tired, but Clara needed the air. Jonathan nodded. Lillian hesitated, then stepped toward him. She spoke low so Clara wouldn't hear. "You're a good father." He blinked. "I'm doing my best. It shows." Her voice carried sincerity that cut deeper than any blade. Jonathan looked away quickly. Compliments felt like bullets. Too heavy, too dangerous to hold. Before he could say anything, a faint metallic hiss cracked through the air. The telegraph. Jonathan froze. "A message?" Lillian whispered. "Storm must have cleared enough for a signal," he muttered. He strode to the telegraph table. The machine clicked again, tapping in short, uneven bursts. Jonathan jotted down the code, pen moving slower as dread crept in. Clara paused her rope braiding. "What does it say, Papa?" Jonathan stared at the paper. His gut twisted. He read the message twice to be sure. Lillian saw his face drain of color. "Jonathan?" He swallowed hard, then met her eyes. "A man is looking for you." Her breath hitched. The message continued. Ryder headed east. Claims wife ran off. Says she stole from him. Dangerous. Possibly armed. Lillian's fingers trembled violently around the scarf at her neck. "No, no, he's coming." Jonathan's voice sharpened. "What did you steal?" She shook her head fiercely. "Nothing. I only took my horse. And my Bible. That's all. He lies when he can't control something. Or someone." Clara stood, small and frightened. "Papa, is someone coming here?" Jonathan folded the paper slowly, deliberately, as though containing a storm inside his fists. "We don't know yet." Lillian's eyes filled with panic. "Jonathan, if he finds me, if he sees your home, he'll assume the worst. He'll hurt anyone in his way." Jonathan straightened, jaw his iron. "He won't step foot in this house." "You don't understand," she whispered. "You don't know him." Jonathan's voice dropped to something quiet, deadly, immovable. "He doesn't know me either." The wind slammed against the station again, spraying snow through the window cracks. Clara clung to Lillian's sleeve. "Miss Lillian, don't go. Please don't leave." Lillian knelt, trembling hands cupping Clara's cheeks. "Sweetheart, I don't want to leave." "But I won't bring danger to your door." Clara shook her head fiercely, tears welling. "You're not danger." Jonathan felt something inside him break. Lillian looked at him, voice cracking. "Jonathan, please, let me go before he reaches the plains." Jonathan stepped forward, slow and firm, like a man crossing a line he once swore he'd never cross again. "No." Lillian froze. Jonathan's voice was steady, grounded, resolute. "You came to my door half dead in a storm. Someone hurt you. Someone chased you. Someone broke something in you that should never have been broken. And you think I'll just open the door and send you back into snow and danger?" Her breath shook. "I won't be the reason you bury your daughter," she whispered. "I won't let my past take anything more from anyone." Jonathan's eyes softened, but his stance didn't budge. "You're not the reason for any danger, Lillian. A wicked man is. And he's got no place here." She shook her head, crying now. "You don't know what he's capable of." Jonathan stepped closer. "And you don't know what I am. I buried my wife. I raised my daughter alone. I've fought wolves, rustlers, storms, and sickness. And I'll fight a cowardly man with a heavy hand, too." Lillian's lips parted, but no words came. Jonathan lowered his voice to something gentle, something painful. "This house has known grief enough. But it won't know fear. Not while I'm standing." Clara sniffled. "Miss Lillian, please stay." Lillian wrapped the girl in her arms, sobbing softly into her hair. Jonathan watched them, heart twisting in ways he hadn't felt in years. Something warm, something frightening, something alive. The telegraph clicked again. Another message. Jonathan walked toward it slowly, dread climbing up his spine like ice. The machine tapped out 4 words. "Ryder spotted near river." Clara gasped. "That's close, Papa." Jonathan nodded once, eyes sharpening. Lillian looked up, pale and trembling. "What do we do?" she whispered. Jonathan holstered his Colt, pulled on his coat, and met her gaze squarely. "Whatever it takes to make sure he never reaches this house." The wind howled. Snow swirled. Danger was coming. And for the first time in 4 years, Jonathan Hale felt something burning in his chest that wasn't grief. It was purpose, and fury, and something terrifyingly close to hope. Snow fell thicker toward noon, a heavy curtain that blurred the plains into a featureless white. Jonathan stepped outside, coat pulled tight against the bitter wind, his boots sinking deep into the powder. The storm had quieted, but not kindly. It was the quiet before something mean and violent. Behind him, the station door creaked open. "Papa?" Clara's voice trembled. He turned. Clara stood bundled in her oversized coat, curls sticking out from beneath her cap. Lillian hovered just behind her, pale, fragile, but trying hard not to look afraid. "Get back inside, honeybee." Jonathan tried to keep his voice calm. Clara didn't move. "Is someone coming for Miss Lillian?" Jonathan didn't lie, not to her. "Maybe." Clara's small fist tightened around her mittens. "I don't want her to go." Lillian's face twisted with quiet grief at the child's words. She knelt, pulling Clara close. "Sweetheart, I'm not leaving unless I must. But some men don't like being told no." Especially my husband. Jonathan watched the wind whip a strand of her pale hair across her bruised cheek. The mark looked darker in the winter light. A silent testimony. Lillian stood, arms wrapped around herself. Her voice was barely audible. "He'll kill me if he finds me." Jonathan stepped toward her. "Not here, he won't." She shook her head. "You don't understand. He once beat a man half to death just for speaking too kindly to me." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "Did he ever put hands on Clara?" he asked, glancing at the child. Lillian blinked in confusion. "No. Clara's not mine." Jonathan froze. Clara looked up, startled. Lillian swallowed. "I meant he doesn't hurt children, only me." Jonathan held her gaze a long moment, then nodded once. "Inside. Both of you." They obeyed. When the door shut behind them, Jonathan exhaled hard, breath steaming into the cold. The plains stretched silent around him. The telegraph message still echoed in his mind. "Rider spotted near river." That river ran only 3 miles west. Jonathan trudged to the shed, brushing snow off the lock. Inside hung his father's old rifle, long-barreled, walnut stock still polished despite the years. He lifted it gently, checking the chamber. The sights, the barrel, the cold metal steadied him. Familiar, honest, unlike men who struck women. When he returned to the house, Lillian was by the fire, rubbing her arms, trembling despite the heat. Clara sat beside her, worried eyes glued to her. Jonathan set the rifle against the wall. Lillian's gaze flickered to it immediately. "Jonathan, you shouldn't involve yourself." "Too late," he said softly. "You brought yourself to my door. That makes you my responsibility." Her lips parted, eyes filling. "No one has ever said that to me before." Clara hopped off the chair and came to Jonathan's side. "Papa always helps people. Mama said kindness is what separates us from the wolves." Lillian swallowed hard. "Your wife sounds like she was remarkable." "She was," Jonathan whispered. Silence stretched, warm and shaky. Then Clara asked the question Jonathan dreaded. "Is the bad man going to take Miss Lillian away?" Lillian knelt, pulling Clara close. "No, sweetheart. No one will take me anywhere I don't want to go." Jonathan didn't say the truth. That violent men didn't ask permission. They just took. He glanced toward the window. Snow drifted sideways again. Somewhere out there, a man with a temper and a gun was riding toward them. Clara noticed his tension. "Papa?" Jonathan forced a small smile. "I'm here, honeybee. Nothing's happening just yet." But Clara didn't look convinced. The hours crawled. Jonathan prepared quietly, setting extra wood by the stove, filling the oil lamps, checking the locks on the doors and windows. He wasn't preparing for war, just for the possibility of something bad reaching their doorstep. Lillian helped as much as she could. She swept the floor, folded blankets, kept Clara occupied with stories and small sewing lessons, but Jonathan could see her hands trembling, hear the slight waver in her breath whenever the wind howled too close to the door. When she thought he wasn't watching, she pressed a palm to her ribs and winced. He finally spoke. "You're hurting more than you said." Lillian hesitated, then nodded. "I fell when I escaped. I think one rib may be cracked." Jonathan cursed under his breath. "Sit. Now." She obeyed instantly, as if years of being ordered around had trained her to react. But Jonathan knelt gently, checking her with careful fingers, never touching where he didn't need to. She flinched anyway. "I'm not him," he murmured. "I know," her voice cracked, "but my body still remembers fear faster than my mind." Jonathan looked up at her, eyes steady. "No one here will ever lay a hand on you in anger. Not while I breathe." Her breath hitched. Tears pooled. "Thank you, Jonathan." Clara brought a blanket and draped it around Lillian like she'd seen her father do. Lillian smiled weakly and pulled the girl into her side. Soft, warm domestic quiet settled for a moment, until a distant noise broke it. A sound carried through the storm. A horse. Jonathan shot to his feet. Lillian's face drained of color. No, he couldn't be that close already. Clara clung to Lillian's arm. "Papa?" Jonathan grabbed his rifle. "Both of you stay here." "No!" Lillian cried, rising too quickly, staggering with pain. "Jonathan, don't face him alone. He'll kill you." Jonathan met her eyes with a quiet resolve that sent a chill through her. "Not if I see him first." He moved to the window, wiping frost from the glass. A dark figure approached through the storm. Tall, heavy, hunched against the wind, coat flapping like the wings of a crow. His horse marched steady and mean, hooves crunching deep into the snow. Lillian sank to her knees. "God help me." Jonathan's voice was low. "Clara, take Miss Lillian to the back room. Deep inside. Don't open that door for anyone but me." Clara nodded, trembling but brave. "Come on, Miss Lillian." Lillian resisted. "Jonathan, please." He turned, eyes soft but firm. "I said I'd keep you safe. Let me do that." Lillian's breath stuttered. She let Clara pull her away. Jonathan stepped outside into the biting cold, snow soaking into his boots instantly. He closed the door behind him, heart pounding steady like a slow drum. The rider slowed to a stop 10 feet away. Jonathan leveled the rifle but didn't raise it fully. Not yet. The man lifted his head. A scar cut across his jaw. His eyes were cold, dead, hungry. His beard was unkempt, his breath steaming like smoke from hell. "You Jonathan Hale?" he drawled. Jonathan didn't answer. "And you are?" The man smirked. "Name's Ward. I'm looking for my wife. Heard she might have come through this way." Jonathan's stomach clenched. Ward spat into the snow. "She's run off before. But she always crawls back. Women like her don't survive long without a man keeping 'em in line." Jonathan's fingers tightened on the rifle. His voice stayed level. "If she don't want to go back, that ought to tell you something." Ward laughed, a cruel, ugly sound. "You telling me you seen her?" Jonathan didn't flinch. "Storms blown through plenty of folks over the years. Hard to keep track." Ward's eyes narrowed. He leaned forward in the saddle. "Let me inside. I want to look around." Jonathan stepped between him and the house. "That won't be happening." Ward sneered. "You hidin' her." Jonathan didn't blink. "If I was, what would you do about it?" Ward's smile vanished. He dismounted slowly, boots crunching in the snow. "You don't want to make this your fight, Hale. She's my property." Jonathan's eyes hardened. "She ain't property. She's a person. And she ain't going anywhere with you." Ward puffed out his chest, reaching for the gun at his hip. "Last warning. Get out of my way." Jonathan lifted the rifle just enough to make his point. "Last warning for you. Turn your horse, ride west, and don't come back." Ward spat again. "You best be careful. My wife's a liar. She'll say anything to get sympathy." Jonathan didn't move. "And what does your fist say?" Ward's face contorted. He lunged for his gun. Jonathan didn't hesitate. He fired a shot directly, into the snow at Ward's feet. Close, enough to send white powder exploding upward. Ward stumbled back, swearing. "One more inch," Jonathan warned, "and I don't miss." Ward froze. For a heavy moment, both men breathed steam into the cold. The plains held their breath. Snow drifted silently. Ward's voice turned snake-slick. "You'll regret this, Hale." "Maybe," Jonathan replied. "But you ain't taking her." Ward snarled, mounted his horse in one furious jerk, and yanked the reins. "This ain't over." Not by a long shot. He turned and disappeared into the storm. Jonathan stood unmoving, heart pounding hard enough to shake his bones. Inside the house, Lillian was pressed against the wall, sobbing quietly into Clara's hair, hands trembling violently. Jonathan stepped back inside, closing the door softly behind him. Lillian looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. "Did he go?" "For now," Jonathan said quietly. "But he'll be back." She sobbed harder, knees giving out. Jonathan caught her before she fell. She buried her face in his chest, shaking uncontrollably. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have come. I shouldn't have—" Jonathan held her tight, voice breaking. "Stop! You did nothing wrong. Nothing!" She clung to him like a drowning woman clings to driftwood. Clara hugged both of them. "Papa, what'll we do?" Jonathan swallowed, looking out at the storm. "Whatever it takes." The wind howled again. Ward would return, and next time he wouldn't come alone. But Jonathan Hale wasn't giving Lillian up. Not to a monster. Not to fear. Not ever. Night settled heavy over the plains, thick as ink, the kind that swallowed sound whole. The fire crackled low in the hearth, casting warm gold across Lillian's pale face. She sat at the table wrapped in Clara's old quilt, fingers trembling no matter how tightly she clutched the fabric. Jonathan stood near the window, rifle leaning against his leg. He watched the horizon like a man expecting the devil himself to crawl out of the dark. Clara sat on the floor between them, braiding rope with shaky hands, glancing up every few seconds to be sure both adults were still there. Lillian's voice broke the silence. "He'll come back tonight." Jonathan didn't turn. "I know. He'll come angry?" "I know. He'll bring others." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "I know that too." Her breath shook. "Jonathan, you're going to get yourself killed trying to protect someone you barely know." He finally faced her. "You're not someone. You're Lillian. And I'm not letting any man treat you like he owns your bones." Her eyes glistened. "Why? Why risk yourself for me?" Jonathan's voice softened into something almost painful. "Because Amelia would have hated the man I'd be if I turned you out to freeze. And because Clara sees you. And because, for the first time in 4 years, the house didn't feel empty when you walked inside." Lillian's breath caught. "Jonathan." He looked away quickly, the words too close to something raw. The wind screamed outside, rattling the shutters. Snow slapped the windows in sharp bursts. Clara tied the rope end and whispered, "Papa, I'm scared." Jonathan crouched down beside her, pulling her close. "Fear ain't weakness, honeybee. It's proof that something matters." Clara nodded, sniffing. The telegraph suddenly clicked. All three of them jolted. Jonathan rushed to the machine. The code tapped fast, frantic. 3 riders headed your direction. Lillian froze. "He brought men." Jonathan grabbed the rifle. Lillian ran to him, gripping his sleeve. "Jonathan, don't go out there. They'll shoot you without speaking." "Exactly why I can't let them get close to the door." Clara rushed to him, eyes brimming. "Papa, please." Jonathan knelt, taking her small face in his hands. "Honeybee, I promised you I'd keep you safe. And I keep my promises." Clara threw her arms around him. "Don't leave us." Jonathan held her tight. "I'm not leaving. I'm just stepping outside long enough to make sure trouble don't walk in." Lillian stared at him like she was memorizing him, like every line on his face mattered more than breath. "If you step outside, you may not come back." Jonathan lifted the rifle, jaw set. "If I stay inside, they'll burn the house down. Men like Ward don't like being denied." Lillian's hands shook violently. "Jonathan, please." He turned to her, voice low, steady. "If anything happens to me, take Clara through the trapdoor. Tunnel leads to the creek bed. Stay low, move east." Lillian's lip trembled. "Don't say that. Don't talk like you're already gone." He reached for her hand without thinking. She clutched his like it was the last warm thing in the world. "I won't die tonight," he whispered. "I've still got things left undone." Their eyes held a long moment. Fear, longing, something deeper neither dared name. Then gunshots cracked in the distance. Clara screamed. Jonathan moved instantly. "Inside. Both of you. Now." Lillian dragged Clara behind the table as Jonathan opened the door. Snow blasted in, cold and sharp as knives. He stepped out onto the porch. 3 riders broke through the storm, dark shapes against the snow, torches flickering like angry spirits. Ward rode at the front, gun raised, face twisted with fury. "Hail!" he bellowed. "You got something of mine." Jonathan raised the rifle. "She ain't yours." Ward fired. The bullet slammed into the porch post, splintering wood inches from Jonathan's head. Jonathan didn't flinch. He fired back, hitting Ward's saddle. The horse reared, screaming. Ward cursed, nearly thrown. The other 2 riders spread out, trying to flank. Jonathan ducked behind a barrel, heart pounding. Snow stung his eyes. Another shot whizzed past him. Inside the station, Clara cried into Lillian's dress. Lillian held her tight, whispering soothing nonsense she didn't believe. Ward shouted over the storm. "Give her up, Hale! Give me my wife, and I'll let you live with your pride." Jonathan shouted back, "She ain't your property, and she sure as hell ain't afraid of you no more." Ward roared in fury. "Newman! Carter! Light it up!" Lillian's breath hitched. "Jonathan, he's going to burn the house." One of the hired men pulled a torch from his saddle. Flames licked upward, hungry, wild. Jonathan surged to his feet, firing. The shot hit the man's arm clean, sending the torch tumbling into the snow, extinguished with a hiss. Ward screamed at his men. "Pick it up! Light it again!" Jonathan took another shot, hitting one rider's leg. He fell from the saddle with a shout. But Ward didn't slow. He rode toward the station like a demon, eyes locked on the door. Lillian screamed from inside. "Jonathan!" Jonathan stepped into the open. Ward raised his gun. Jonathan aimed dead center. Both men fired. Jonathan staggered, bullet grazing his shoulder. He dropped to one knee. Blood soaked his coat instantly, warm against the cold. Lillian cried out in raw agony, pressing a hand over her mouth. Ward laughed, thinking Jonathan was down. He rode closer, gun pointed. Lillian acted without thinking. She burst through the door. Clara screamed after her. "Miss Lillian, no!" Lillian stood in the snow, hair whipping, eyes blazing through tears. "Enough, Thomas! Enough!" Ward's grin spread wide. "There she is." The runaway. Jonathan tried to rise. "Lillian, get back!" Ward leveled his gun at Jonathan. "Time to finish what you interrupted." Lillian stepped between them. Ward blinked. "Move?" "No, move." She didn't. Ward growled, "You're my wife. You obey me." "No." Her voice shook, but she stood firm. "I'm not yours. I'm not anyone's. And you won't raise another hand to me. Not again." Ward lost the last of his patience. He cocked the hammer. "Last chance, Lily." Jonathan forced himself upright, blood dripping. Before Ward could fire, Clara burst out the door, sobbing. "Papa!" Ward flinched at the sudden movement. That was all Jonathan needed. He fired. The bullet hit Ward's gun hand, sending the weapon flying. Ward howled, clutching his wrist. Jonathan stepped forward, rifle aimed directly at Ward's chest, breath ragged. "Walk away, now, or I finish this." Ward's lip curled, hatred twisting his features. "You'll pay for this, Hale. All of you." Jonathan didn't blink. "Step away." Ward staggered toward his horse, blood dripping into the snow. The remaining rider helped him mount. Ward spat one last threat. "This ain't over." Jonathan lowered the rifle only when the riders vanished into the storm. Then he collapsed to one knee, gripping his bleeding shoulder. Lillian ran to him immediately, falling beside him in the snow. "Jonathan! Jonathan, stay with me!" Clara wrapped her arms around his uninjured side, crying. Jonathan exhaled shakily. "I'm all right. Just stings like hell." Lillian pressed trembling fingers to the wound, trying to stop the blood. Her tears fell onto his sleeve. "Don't you ever do something that foolish again." He managed a weak smile. "Couldn't let him take you." Lillian's voice cracked. "You almost died. Worth it." Her breath caught. She cupped his cheek with shaking hands. "Jonathan." He leaned slightly into her touch, eyes soft despite the pain. "I told you. I'm not letting anyone hurt you. Not now. Not ever." Lillian kissed his forehead, soft, desperate, grateful, and whispered, "Thank you." They pulled him inside together. Lillian bandaged his shoulder with practiced hands despite her own ribs aching. Clara held his hand the entire time, refusing to let go. Later, when Jonathan finally rested against the pillows, pale but alive, Lillian sat beside him and took his hand gently. "I'm staying," she whispered. "If you'll let me." Jonathan opened his eyes slowly. Snow fell quiet outside, softer now like a blessing. "You're safe here, Lillian. As long as you want. As long as you need." She exhaled shakily. "And after?" He squeezed her hand. "And after, too." Clara climbed onto the bed, curling into both of them. "Does this mean we're a family now?" Jonathan looked at Lillian. Lillian looked at Jonathan. Something settled in the space between them. Warm, fragile, real. Lillian brushed Clara's curls. "If you want us to be." Clara nodded fiercely. "I do." Jonathan smiled, the first real smile in years. "Then I reckon we are." Outside, the storm finally broke. Dawn crept across the plains, gold and soft, touching the snow like forgiveness. And inside the old station, 3 hearts beat together. No longer alone, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. The past had chased them through the cold. But love, quiet, stubborn, brave, had made a home here. And home, at long last, had room enough for 3.